Welcome to the Kalish Mentorship Q&A call, live time with Dr. Dan. This is Leslie. I'm a practitioner consultant for the Kalish Institute, and we're excited to have you all here tonight. Dr. Dan, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Leslie, for helping us get this together.
Absolutely.
And then I also mentioned that for people that are listening in, we have plenty of time for questions. If you guys have questions, you can raise your hand or make a little comment, and we can call on people once we go through the basic presentation and show you guys what we're up to here.
I do have some questions also that folks have emailed in.
Okay. Should I start off with a little tour and then we'll do that?
Yeah, that would be great. And if I can just share too, please stay tuned because we do have a special. Those of you that are on with us tonight are on our VIP early enrollment list. And we do have a special offer that's good through the end of the week. So we'll share more about that later.
Okay, great. Thanks, Leslie. So you know what I like to do just to start off is show you guys a little bit about what the class is about and sort of behind the scenes look that you get once you, start to enroll in the class and see all the stuff that we put aside. And there's two major features that we'll look at here. One is what's on the board right now, which is the basic course curriculum. And you can see it's broken down into sections, and each section has videos, and it goes from the orientation over to the basics of fundamental philosophy of functional medicine. We get into talking about lifestyle and big section on supplements, and then we break it out into the different clinical topics: adrenals, thyroid. It goes on through all the gut-related issues, and then there's a pretty significant section, maybe almost a third of the course, that talks about the complex female hormone protocols you can do, etc. And then if you sign up for the year-long program, then we have a whole other section that gets into organic acids testing. If you just do the 6-month program, then we do hormones, gut, and stop there. So depending on how much you want to get into this, there's a couple different ways you can either do the 6-month or 12-month programs. And I think most of that depends on the personality of the person. The 6 months is a lot of information, and if you get overwhelmed easily or you're super busy, that may be enough. The 12 months, that includes the organic acids, is really everything that I do in practice. So if you really want a complete vision of the whole thing, then the year-long program is better. And if you decide to do 6 months, you want to do the other part later, you can sign up for the other part later as well. So there's a curriculum that rolls out like that, basically, where you're online and you're doing courses. And then we have pretty extensive software that we've developed. I guess you could call it a learning management system that we've custom built over the years. And this is what we call the community. And so the community has, like you would imagine, Facebook, right? It has a feed here where doctors are communicating with each other about what they're doing in their classes. And here's Dr. Claire talking about toxins, and different people talking about different things throughout the different classes that are going on. And then also within, in addition to the discussion forum, we also have all kinds of content resources here. And this is where it gets pretty interesting. So we have a case study library of a bunch of participants. You can see the other doctors, and talk to them. But then we have this case study library, which has, I think at this point, about 2,000 cases in it. So if you get a new case that comes in and you're wondering how are you going to handle this mitochondrial problem, you type in mitochondria to the case study library, you'll see, whoops, did I not spell mitochondria right? Let's try that again. Let's see, neurotransmitter or something like that. Must have had a typo in there. You'll have case after case after case that talk about that specific subject. So, and within the cases, you click on any of these here. Let's go to the first one. Let's see here. Case of focusing on neurotransmitter issues and program design. Case study number 1729. So every one of these cases, you can watch the video for it. In this case, it's a 23-minute video about how to design neurotransmitter programs. And then it's also all transcribed or written down for you. So again, we have several thousand case studies, probably more than you could ever listen to or watch, that go into detail on all the different things that you might actually want to do in practice. I know, we've kind of overbuilt this a little bit, huh? And then we have, in addition to that, we have within the community feature a lot of different experts that I've interviewed over the years that are in here. So again, that's under content, and that would be under clinical topics here. So everything from legal advice to practice building advice. You can see some of the ones here: telemedicine, legal roadblocks, um, strategies for working with difficult cases with female hormones. You know, so it's a huge number of clinical topics, legal topics, business topics, etc. that we have in here as well. All kinds of guest speakers, and there's a lot of sort of practical information. And then we have the whole curriculum also organized along the lines of a treatment map here. So if you get a case, let's say you get a brand new case and you're in the first month of class and you're trying to figure out, you know, how to work with their actually, let's say detox issues, but you haven't gotten to that portion of the course yet, you can just cut over here and go right to the various protocols for any given area. So even if you haven't been to that part of the curriculum yet and covered that, you can still cut over and learn about the supplements and protocols. So we try to make this very clinically applicable and easy for people to orient. And then, if that's not all, we have each group that starts has a time where we do Q&A calls. So each week I teach all the calls myself. And I'm the teacher, so of course I have access to all the calls. You can see how many we have going on here. But you know, these are the different groups: the January group, May group. This would be the September 2017 group. So each group also has their live weekly call, and we go through and talk about the lab testing that you guys are submitting, other questions that you have. So there's this live component every week where we're interacting as a small group. We also tend to attract a really, really sophisticated, intelligent, smart, and nice group of compassionate doctors. And so you'll find that the other people in the class bring a lot to it. And when we get discussions going, it's not just about me teaching things. It's really about group collaboration and if you're using the software well, you know, you probably learn as much from the other students as you do from the actual content of the course. So again, we have the community features here where you're interacting with other people, you're interacting with your classmates, you have all this content available, and then the actual curriculum is organized in this linear fashion here. Let's see, am I missing anything, Leslie? Those are probably the biggest features of the course.
Yeah.
Why don't you throw some questions at me?
Sure.
Let me know what has come in, and then anyone who's listening, please, yeah, raise your hand if you have additional questions. I can unmute you and you can ask.
Well, actually, I will just throw in on that note, Dan. Did we touch on that practitioners were able to forward unlimited labs to you once they're in the program? For those.
Oh yeah. I didn't really talk about that. Let me show. Actually, let me show people, because this is one of the best features of the class, is that every week people are doing their labs, and every week doctors send in the tests. And I'll just show you an example from last week. Find a good one from last week. And so we have, you know, different class times, and what ends up happening is the doctors will just select out either difficult cases or cases that you're wondering about. And here's a typical class. This is from a couple weeks ago, 22nd of August. And then here's Tanya, one of the doctors, actually nurse practitioner, sorry, she's one of the nurse practitioners in the class, and she's submitting a case. And so people write up the case, we have a form for it, and then they submit all the labs that came in that were associated with the case. In this situation, there's an H. pylori, and there's an organic acids. Oh my gosh, look at all this writing everywhere. So we spend, you know, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 minutes on each case, going through them and sorting through, and let's see what else. And then, you know, obviously we write up protocols and talk about them. Tanya sent in a couple here. And sometimes the doctor will send in 1 or 2 labs, 1 or 2 patients. Sometimes doctors go for a few weeks and don't submit any. Then here's Joe Gesh submitting another lab. And here's an adrenal lab. This was actually a pretty interesting case because Dr. Joe Gesh did an adrenal salivary test and a Dutch test on the same patient. We got to compare those two, so that was interesting. And again, this is sort of typical. There's anywhere from probably 20 to 60 pages of labs per week that we go through. There's another organic acids from that same patient. And there's anywhere from here, Joe Gesh has a second patient she sent in. So you can see doctors have 1 or 2 people. Sometimes people go for a month or 2, they don't submit a lot. Sometimes we'll get 5 cases in a row. And basically we go through every case that every doctor sends in. Now a lot of the information is also in the curriculum, so you can figure things out. But if you can't, here's Pooja. She's one of our practitioners in Singapore. Um, if you can't figure it out or you have questions, then the whole point of the weekly calls is to discuss each lab and make sure everyone gets their questions answered. That's kind of the fun part of the class in a lot of ways. I think it's the part that doctors like the most because they get to interact with other doctors and get their questions answered and stuff.
Yeah, I hear that a lot as feedback. So I will share some questions if you want to run through these
Yeah.
that I received.
But when I teach all the classes myself, like there's no other teacher involved. Like I'm the one that's on the phone every week. So.
Very important point.
Yeah, you're stuck with me basically.
So one question here, speaking of labs, what labs will I be running in your program?
Oh, that's a very good question. So in the world of Dan, we're into super simple. So in the treatment map, kind of lays it all out here. We do GI, neuroendocrine, and detox testing. And that boils down to 3 tests really. So salivary hormones, plus some people do thyroid. GI would be foods and pathogens, microbiome testing, everything to do with GI. And then detox system is mostly from organic acids, where you're looking at detox pathways. So generally 3 or 4 tests. And when doctors submit cases, we try to keep it as simple as possible, even though there's so much other testing you can do. I feel like this training program is really learning how to do the basics well, rather than veering off into complex things with we try to avoid a sense of overwhelm, basically, make it really doable.
Someone's asking, how is your program different than IFM's?
Yeah, so we have a really wonderful and close relationship with IFM. In fact, I spent probably 5 hours in the last 5 days talking with people over at IFM. So I think of IFM as like the medical school for functional medicine. That's where you really learn your physiology and all the functions of everything, and you get all the complexity and the deeper level of understanding. And then my program is very much the how-to application part. And most people that take our training program either have completed the IFM certification or have at least started it and have a general sense of the science behind functional medicine, and they're looking for a simple, easy to implement sort of practice solution. And so we work really well in conjunction with IFM, and we're not a substitute or replacement. As a matter of fact, I went to 3 IFM modules myself last year just to refresh myself and get up to speed on the latest. So I think that kind of academic education is always necessary, but that there's a gap there that we fill, which is so it's kind of the silly stuff. It's like, okay, well, if you have H. pylori, exactly what herbal product do you use? How many pills? For how long? What do I tell the patient? What are the side effects? What happens, like, for example, let's look at pathogens here. You go into protocols. And that's like literally what we end up spending a lot of our time doing. Okay, here's the H. pylori protocol. Here's a video about it. We'll talk about it in class. Here's the actual product and the company name and all that level of detail that IFM is not able to teach because they're an academic institution and they can't talk about specific brands and make specific recommendations about things that are commercial and business oriented. But we can, and a large part of what I really try to do is get people up to speed on the business side of things in a practical way. And let me grab Karen here. She had a question too. Karen, can you hear me there? Karen, you there? All right, I'll read out your question. I unmuted you, Karen, but I'll read out the question in case your mic's not working. Karen Meadows just asked, as a doctor getting back into practice with limited number of patients, do you recommend your program if I don't have any case studies to submit? So most of the doctors in the class have labs that are coming in every week. If you don't, because you're a student and you're still in the clinic or something like that, or you're a doctor who's had a couple of kids, now you're coming back into practice. We get a fair number of doctors who are in their 60s and 70s, and they kind of are semi-retired, but they really want to do functional medicine. So whatever the circumstances might be, if you don't have your own patients, it is not a problem because your classmates basically will generate cases for you, and so you'll be able to learn from them. And what I suggest for people in that situation is that you test yourself, test a couple family members. So even if you don't have patients that are paying you, you can, most doctors can get probably 4 to 6 sets of labs done over the course of 6 months with family and friends. So they're getting a little bit of experience of their own, trying to get comfortable with that, but primarily learning from the hundreds and hundreds of labs that'll roll in from their fellow students. And then when you get into practice, if you're still building, you will have seen hundreds of these cases, and a lot of this confidence that people need to develop in functional medicine just comes from the volume of cases. Like, I mean, really seriously, if you just paid for the class and ignored everything else, but just watched every case study in here, and you watched 2,000 case studies, you would have, I mean, how many years does it take a typical doctor to process 2,000 patients? I don't know, 6, 8 years, something like that. So that repetition of seeing case after case really leads people to develop a confidence in how effective this stuff is, which allows them then to practice, I think, more effectively, because they're not nervous about whether things are going to work or not.
Yeah, we hear, I would say, first and foremost, that this program is such a confidence builder, right, Dan, as far as understanding, interpretation, protocol, delivery, and just that confidence that's built over time, being in your world around that.
Yeah, I was talking with one of the sales reps for one of the supplement companies about this last week at a meeting, and she was saying, we have this student in the class now, his name is John. That's his real name, we'll call him John. But anyway, so John was telling her that, I don't know, because Kalish just tells us, exactly what to do, and I figure he's been doing this for a while, it's probably going to work. And it was just total flashback, because when my first year of doing this, I would call Dr. Timmons, and I firmly believe this. Okay, this guy is old, he's in his 60s, he's got gray hair, he's been doing this for 30 years. If he tells me I'm going to use this amount of mastica for H. pylori, odds are pretty good he's done this, a couple thousand times, it's probably going to work. And that kind of shaky confidence, just completely relying on Dr. Timmons and his clinical expertise, got me through my first 3 or 4 years, honestly, until I realized, this does work. It takes a while to get that, to see enough cases that you realize that, these protocols are incredibly effective. You can't know that right away until you really jump in and start doing them.
Someone's asking, how can I ask questions during the course? I guess what are the different, avenues that practitioners are able to access you for questions?
Yeah, so we try to direct people as much as possible. I didn't show that on this other form here, but as much as possible, we try to direct people to ask questions for class. Like here, these are a bunch of case studies from classes in the past few weeks, but sometimes we'll also, I don't think I have any on this one, sometimes people actually just will submit a question, or they'll submit a question and a case study together. Like here's a good example. This was a case that was submitted, but then she's got her questions here. When did ovulation occur? What should I do about the progesterone? Is this a stage 3 timing issue? So we're going through questions, but in the context of a specific patient and specific labs. Or you can see, actually this was a pretty good example. You can see here, will the DHEA supplement deal with the testosterone levels? So, sometimes people put into their case studies really specific questions about that individual patient, and we'll just go over it in class so the whole group can learn from it. And then the nice thing is that there's a context for it too, right? Because there's a lab test and we can kind of get a general sense of what's happening here. Let me grab Santiago. I had a question here too. Santiago, are you there? Can you hear me? Santiago?
Yeah, Dr. Kalish?
Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm calling from South America, Chile.
You're in Chile?
Yeah, very far away.
Okay, one of my favorite doctors we ever had is from Bolivia.
Wow, near
and
neighbors.
He took this class. I love this guy. If you end up signing up, we'll connect you to.
Oh, nice.
We also have, my 2 favorite doctors are from your part of the world. We also have a doctor in Mexico City.
Nice.
Who's just amazing. She's got an incredible practice going. So you can definitely do this internationally, and we have a couple of people like that I can think of that obviously are Spanish speaking and kind of have worked out a lot of the detail, especially having to do with how do you ship labs and supplements and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I took a long road asking all the labs. Finally, I found like Genova can help me,
Hmm.
and also the Great Plains have like a department for Latin America.
Yep,
For Latin
exactly.
America. Yeah, and yeah, part of my question was, well, this is my first step. I'm in my country. I'm a kinesiologist. That it's, I think in Canada it exists that credential, but not in the U.S. Kinesiologist, some sort of physiotherapist, but that do
Hmm.
other things also. And also, I'm a licensed acupuncture.
Hmm.
Uh, so I was thinking is this can be my first step into functional medicine. I have heard a lot of things. I'm always learning, but I wanted to give it a try, like with a structure. And finally, I'm feeling this is more structured than all the other courses I saw. So I don't know if this is too much for being like my first step into it.
No, no, not at all. In fact, when here's the thing is that when this is a this is a big picture thing. It's hard for me to communicate this, but like when when I was first learning how to do functional medicine, there were no courses in functional medicine. You just found a doctor that knew what they were doing, and you hoped that they would spend some time with you. And I think that there's nothing replaces that one-to-one relationship that you have with a senior doctor that's actually been doing this for a while. That can just tell you the ins and outs of it. And that's what I tried to mimic with this whole course, is
Mm,
that experience that I had. Now, separate from that, I mean, I'm not going to teach you guys like the physiology of peroxyl 5-phosphate. Like that's something you can do with IFM. That's something you can do with another online course or a basic physiology course. So we're not
mhm.
talking about complex scientific ideas. We're talking about practical application.
Yeah,
And in fact, I don't want to demean functional medicine at all, but the actual act of doing functional medicine is pretty simple, even though the theory behind it and the science behind it is incredibly
yeah,
complex.
yeah. Understand.
You know what I mean? And so this is the biggest problem in our profession is that people get bogged down for years, I'm including myself in this, in studying the theory, and they want to apply it, but they never take that next step.
Hmm.
And so I'm not
Right.
against learning the theory. I'm a compulsive learner myself, and I grew up in a very academic family, you know,
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
academic family. And so I'm not afraid of academics at all. As a matter of fact, it was a large part of my first half of my life was all about academics. But what I
Hmm.
learned was that you don't need the deep academic understanding to do the application part, you know?
Yeah.
And and so in fact you can take this class at any time, whether you're starting to learn about the science, have already understood the science, it doesn't really matter. Um,
Hmm.
I don't, and people don't get overwhelmed because this is very much just like we're looking at a lab, we're going to interpret it, we're going to recommend some programs, move on, look at a lab, interpret it. So it's very it's not just systematized, but it's very structured and very as much as we can easy to learn. That's kind of the
Yeah.
goal. And then what happens is everybody that I've ever trained, I've trained like 1,000 people now. So when I go to an IFM conference, I'll walk around the halls. I'll always run into like 5 or 10 former students. Everybody that I've ever trained has gone on to do a lot more in terms of learning about functional medicine. But this is, what I teach is just really like the basis or the foundation or that first step
Hmm.
that even when I see doctors that I trained 10 years ago, they'll still be using my stuff a little bit, but have added many layers onto that as they've learned more and grown more. And
Perfect.
that's kind of my hope, really, is to provide the starting point. It's kind of like the kindling in a fire. It's just this first little spark that then can
Mm.
turn into a very long career for people.
Sweet. And one last very concrete question, like for the
Mm-hmm.
GI map from Diagnostic Solution, um, you can make an account, you can order the GI map, because I know that the times like are okay for the 2 business day shippings, but I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if Diagnostic Solution, because it's a very weird page when I saw it, like it's not so friendly for doing like an account. Like I couldn't find if you being a a Kalish method practitioner, you can order this test like a practitioner, you know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how they have it set up, but those guys are good friends of mine. So if you sign up for the class, just email me and we'll get it connected so it works easily. It may not be online. They may not have that, and they don't have this wide distribution network like Genova has international distributors all over the world.
Yeah. Mm.
And GI Map as a company, Diagnostic Solutions, has only been around for about 2 years, so they don't have that extensive network.
Yeah.
But mostly it comes down to the ease of shipping for most of these situations. As long as you can ship it back in a couple of days, then you should be okay.
Thanks. Nice.
Yeah, just let me know if you need help with that. We can help.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Santiago. It would be great to have you. Be a good excuse for me to go visit South America too. I wouldn't mind going down.
Oof. Yeah, if you want, it's a beautiful country. A lot of landscape, different landscapes.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Karen raised her hand. Let's see if we can unmute her now. Karen, you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Works now.
Great. Yes. I'm sorry. I was away from my computer before, so I couldn't really ask my question. That's why I typed it in. But my question now is, since you're testing, or we will be testing the neurocrine, the GI, and the systems that detox, I need to look into the labs to make sure that I'm able to order the correct test, or it's within my scope of practice. Will I be asking about saliva testing, which I know I can do, but do I also have to ask about urine or what was the other one? Fecal?
Yeah. What are you licensed as? What's your license?
Chiropractic, DC.
Oh yeah, DC can do all this. I'm a DC. Yeah, everything is DC friendly.
South Carolina is not so chiro friendly sometimes.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Well, you might be the first one. We have never had a DC with trouble getting the labs.
Okay, but I just want to make sure.
It's possible. So anyways, the neuroendocrine is salivary. The detox is all urine testing, which 99.9% sure is fine. The only thing you might have trouble with is a stool test. If so, South Carolina would be the only state I've ever heard that's a problem with for chiropractors, but you might be the one place that we don't know about.
Well, I will look into it.
We would figure out some kind of workaround for that. I'm not sure exactly how we would do it, but usually the easiest thing is to find some allied health professional that can help you with the lab in that particular one situation.
Okay.
Or there's also a company called directlabs.com, and they'll just ship labs anywhere in the country, and you're not involved. Your patient orders it directly from Direct Labs, and you're not involved at all.
Okay.
So that's another way you can do it. It's a little more expensive, obviously. Direct Labs, they add a few bucks onto the test, but that's an easy way to do it as well. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And let me know if you do join in with the class. We'll figure it out because haven't had that problem yet. But I don't think we've had anyone from South Carolina yet either. So.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
And Leslie, any other questions that I missed there? How do we lose Leslie? Hang on, let me see if I can find her. Oh, sorry, I muted you by mistake, Leslie. Leslie, you there?
There I am.
Hey, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, we have a couple more good ones. Someone's asking, will this mentorship help me create an all-cash practice?
Yeah, that is $1 million question, literally. So,
right?
Yeah, I personally have and am an advocate for all-cash practices. And so that is very much my bias to help people build that same model. However, I do understand that some people want to serve an underserved population, or for some reason they want to deal with insurance companies or have to deal with insurance companies, so we try to have some workarounds for that. But fundamentally, this at its heart, this is easiest to execute as a cash-based model. And most people that are getting involved with the work that we're doing are, I would say, at least moving in that direction. If they don't have a cash-based practice yet, they're moving in that direction strongly.
Okay, and This is back kind of on the training. I've done a lot of training. They're listing IFM, A4M. So, how can I know that this is going to be a smart investment for me?
Yeah, sometimes it requires a phone call with me, and I talk to people one-on-one just to make sure it's going to be a good fit. But,
Right.
I think that the doctors that we get that are really sophisticated and extremely well trained usually come into the course because they're looking for a simple model. They typically have too much information, and either they've grown a clinic very large and it's overwhelming, and they maybe are at a point in their career where they just want to trim things back, or they've been to every seminar and they know a lot, but they've never really gotten that first implementation step, that first kind of take the training wheels off and let's make a go of it, actually treating patients step. And so we end up with a pretty, I would say, outrageously sophisticated group of doctors in general. There is no shortage of functional medicine knowledge bouncing around in our Q&A calls. People are smart and they know what they're doing, but there's a common interest in creating a cash-based, easy-to-implement model. That's kind of where we're at. So we get some of these doctors who have been in practice for 20 years that just want to simplify and bring things down, and then the equal number of doctors who are just starting out who want to have a platform to operate on. It's an interesting mix. We might have people on the same call that have been in practice for 2 years and 35 years, all kind of rallied around the same basic concept here, which is we need a clinical, simple clinical model, basically.
Yeah, and if I could just add too, I don't know what your thought is here, Dan, on the number, but I feel that the number has grown of doctors that are coming in that I speak to that have done multiple trainings, that are IFM board certified and A4M, studied and done some of the A4M classes and so forth, but their pain point, kind of where they're struggling, is they're not able to implement all this knowledge. And I feel like that population keeps growing of your mentorship base.
Yeah. It's more and more. I'd say it's the majority of people now have actually had a fair amount of training, but haven't been able to implement yet.
Yes.
And
So it's
actually,
such an exciting turning point for them when they get in, and then they start being able to really create this powerful, simple model that you have.
I know. The funny thing is, like, when it's hard for me to explain the class because I created the class and obviously I'm going to think it's great. But when people get into it and they're actually enrolled and they see what we've built, it's usually a combination of shock and awe, right? Because people are like, I can't believe this is like everything that I wanted. It's all crammed into this one course. It's like, and I thought about this. I mean, I've been obsessing on this for about 20 years. This is like everything. If I could have waved a magic wand in my first year of practice and said, abracadabra, I want everything to start a practice right here in front of me right now. I mean, that's what this class is, right? You can only really build this if you've suffered through not having it, in a way. But you're right. When doctors come in now, it's like there's just not a lot of other people who are teaching a practical turnkey kind of system. Because most of the people that are out there that are teaching are really brilliant, science-oriented people who are teaching the brilliance of the science of all this, and not the stuff like, what do you say when someone takes some amino acids and it makes them nauseous instead of making them sleep better? What does that mean? Oh, that means there's a bacterial overgrowth? I didn't know that. It was like, yeah, that's what it means. That kind of like rubber hits the road stuff is really important. And I mean, if you give 3 people in a row amino acids to help them sleep and they all get nauseous, you're going to get scared and think something's wrong, not knowing that all 3 of those people probably had really bad bacterial overgrowth in their small intestine. And that, you know what I mean? And so those kind of things can really derail people. And a lot of what we're trying to do now is give that really simple, practical advice that will keep people enrolled, keep doctors enrolled so they don't drop out of practice and think that the stuff is not working well or be afraid of it anyway,
Right. Okay, should we talk? I can share briefly about this upcoming class and the special. Do you have any more questions on this? Okay.
No,
great.
Please do.
Okay, so for those of you that are leaning towards you're ready to go, we have a special offer for this upcoming September class that is good through this Friday. And you've heard a little bit about it, I know, if you've been on our email list, but just to refresh you, if you enroll by this Friday, I think it's technically by midnight, then you receive $500 off the tuition, which is normally $84.95 for the 6 months with Dr. Dan, and the weekly calls and submitting labs and the 6 months of course modules. So that would bring it to, what is that, $7,995. And you also are able to receive a module from the practice management course, which has, I believe, a $1,600 value-ish, maybe a little bit more. So you receive access to that module for the length of the course. And we wanted to make sure that we threw in some nice kind of bonuses for you. So you also received the special sheet on presenting adrenal findings as well. I think if you're on this call, you probably received that as well. So please take advantage of that through Friday night. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to book a call with me. I also connect doctors to Dr. Dan. If you want to have some time with him and do a 15-minute call with him, that's okay with you, Dan, this week? I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we also could, connect doctors with other doctors. Like Santiago might want to talk to our doctors in Mexico City or Bolivia, or sometimes chiropractors want to talk to other chiropractors about the class. So it's always good for us to
do that.
try to connect people with. And you can, we have such a wonderful group of graduates. It's like it's more of a community than anything else, I know it's kind of expensive to take the class, but once you're in it, you really kind of become part of this really cool group of people that, like I said earlier, I think the community feature is, at this point, is probably more important than my contributions and my teaching, because you're getting access to hundreds of other doctors that are like-minded that you can learn from, for the rest of your career and connect with. And it's a hard thing in practice. It's very easy to get isolated in a functional medicine practice, and it's not always able to travel to conferences and things like that. And having a group of people that you can just have on email and you can call and be in classes with, really, it makes a big difference for the doctor's sanity and peace of mind and happiness, It's a hard job. Dealing with sick people all day long, it's a hard job. And it's like being a cop, you just have to hang out with other cops a little bit, just because there's a common understanding about what you're actually doing. I mean, the population doesn't get.
That's a good point. Yeah, but I think you are a little humble, because I think that it's also very powerful for doctors to have a real mentor that's guiding them for the course of the time that they have with you, and that they know, okay, I can start doing these uncomfortable new things. I can start presenting, I can have my patients start to take these new labs, and they're getting in a little bit of an uncomfortable zone, right, doing new things. And I hear time and time again how helpful it is and how accessible you are. And I think that's a really powerful part of the program that's not really out there in other programs.
Yeah, it is really like.
I want to toot your horn there.
It's like having me in your treatment room, in a sense. We get to talk every week, and I want to get involved. I think a lot of the teachers that do things online don't want to get involved. That's why they're teaching online classes. They don't want to deal with other human beings one-on-one. But my whole thing is, got this from the Jewish side of my family, my dad. Like, I want to be involved. I want to be in your face and in your practice and straightening things out. That's the whole point of a mentorship, that you have someone that can contribute to professional development in a personal way as well as in a professional way. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the class, I guess. All right, Leslie, thank you for your time. Are we good now on everything?
Yeah, I think we're wrapped up with the questions that I have. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have more questions, fire away. Otherwise, when's this class start date, Leslie? I forget.
It is Tuesday, September 26th are the first live calls.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I hope to see you all then.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye now. Thanks.